computer. Hello, and welcome back to the Bare Bones Conversations with myself, Corey Hess. And today I have, I'm very excited. I have Jo-san, Shinjo Jyl Brewer with me today. Welcome, Jo-san.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm really happy you're doing these series. So thank you for doing all these. It's really fascinating to connect all of these people through your interviews, and because of your knowledge, your questions are awesome. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you. So I wanted to bring Jo-san on. She was very inspiring to my wife and I especially when we started training, seeing someone deeply in their body and full of energy and kind of a wild character. We didn't come to Zen wanting to be, really good Buddhists. We thought, oh, there's some kind of aliveness in life which we were really interested in, and we really felt that Jo-san was a very good example of what we were looking for, this real spark to life, and how could we learn to embody that and move with it. And so I wanted to bring her on today to present that to the world. Like, this is another flavor of what Zen might be and what Zen could blossom into. Okay. So Jo-san, you grew up in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I hear what you said. It's kind of cool because when growing up in the country in Iowa, so I was very connected to nature. That every night I would go out and sit and watch the beavers in the pond, and I would sneak out of my bedroom window at night. As 6-7 years old, and I would just sit outside for hours under the night sky. And I think me growing up, I was always a really emotional kid, and really intense. And growing up in the Midwest, people don't really show their emotions. And the conversation is often, honestly, it sounds very a common generalization, but it's true. They talk about the weather a lot, and I remember as a child even, I always thought, wow, this is all we talk about. I'd look at the adults and I would feel very confined. And the only outlet I had was going out into nature and watching TV and movies where I saw the actors really express themselves how I felt inside of myself. And also when I was a child, I started to have kind of out-of-body experiences. When I was sleeping, I could leave my body and float to where I want. I started to train myself so I could actually say, I'm going to fly tonight. Wow. And I would hover above my body and come back into my body in the morning. And I was like, yeah, I get to go to bed. I'm going to go fly again. And I always had this sense, so I don't even know where it came from, that there's more to life than this physical body, that I am not my physical body. And I knew there was something much larger. And my path was to study acting because my other connection, I didn't really connect. I didn't find a lot of mentors growing up in Iowa. Although I had a really loving, supportive family, which is really rooted, but not. So anyway, I went to New York City, long story short, to study acting because I felt like that was kind of like getting to more of a true way of expression, something, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I studied the Meissner Technique, which I really want to work with now in my current life because it's a really fascinating technique. I won't go into it now, but it's basically getting rid of all the layers of self so that you're acting from truth. So all of we all have defenses in life, like even the simplest things, like someone who just touches their hair all the time. So as an actor, you're learning these defense mechanisms that build character. So each character, the way character is formed, in the belief of Sanford Meissner, is we form our personality from our defenses. But at the heart of it is a truth And so as an actor, we strip away our own personal defenses and we go to counsel. All actors have their own therapists. You work with that, you work with uncovering, and then you can add layers to become a character later. So it's kind of, that technique was really fascinating to me. So, but I was still like, and the thread you talked about bringing life to Zen, you know, my first day at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, we went around the room and the acting coach said, "Why are you here?" And everyone had these various reasons. And I said, "I just have passion for finding true expression." And when my acting school became more about going to cocktail parties and wearing makeup, which I was never good at, I even had my fellow students say, "You know, you could be really pretty if you wore makeup, or you should come to the cocktail parties more often. You'd actually get asked to auditions."
Right.
And it was around that time that I was working on 55th Street, and hanging from the Museum of Modern Art were the 3 Butoh dancers from Sankai-juku.
Yeah.
And I thought that they were sculptures. They were hanging upside down from the top of the building. And I remember just staring at them. And as they started to move, I realized these are humans. It was amazing. There were these naked, white, Japanese bodies.
Yeah.
And the expression and they were moving at a different pace than New York City. So New York was like, whoa, you know, the horns honking, and it's really an intense place. I love it, but it's definitely one speed. Like,
yeah.
And when they came down in this way, literally that street stopped. People were watching them, and it felt to me like everything became silent, and all you could see were these 3 bodies coming down. And the name of that dance is, in Japanese, it means the cycle of birth and death. So they come out like little fetuses, and then they open up, and then they die when they hit the ground.
Yeah.
So it's the circle of life. And when I saw that, I was like, that's it. That's like hitting more to the core of the expression I'm looking for. When my acting school is going more for, maybe you should get a nose job, maybe you should get some more makeup, maybe you should, you know, like go to auditions and wear this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Yeah.
It wasn't really,
Yeah.
I wasn't good at that. I wasn't really good at that. So anyway, long story short, I ended up going to Japan to first study Butoh dance. That was kind of my doorway into Zen.
And who was that with at first?
Well, I first got connected with Katsura Khan in Kyoto, and he
really?
had a company, and we toured through Indonesia and stuff. And then in the middle of my time with Katsura, I went for a few months with Min Tanaka's farm at Maijuku outside of Tokyo. And that, to me, that was more at the core of what Katsura Khan is more about form, even though Butoh is not about form. But Min Tanaka's a whole life. You go to his farm and it's 24/7. Even when you're sleeping, he believes everything we do in our life is Butoh. Butoh is not a separate dance. Yes. Butoh is just a moment in time. Like when you see a performance, it's a moment in time of a dancer's life.
Yes.
They don't separate that from their daily life. So like I'd get up at 5 a.m. and I was feeding the goats, and I worked in the rice field, and then we would go up, hike up the mountain, and we would go dance. We'd still dance between those things, but he said dance was nothing if you don't use that moment to moment awakeness from, I mean, he would say, like, if someone walked, for example, we were having our morning coffee, and Min Tanaka would sit there, and he was a very imposing, especially Japanese, large, huge hands, beautiful presence, amazing human being. And he would just sit there, and if someone walked in, it wasn't kind of like a judgment. There was no like sense of, oh, he's a sensei or anything. It was just, he was like, ah, and we'd like, what? And he was like, how did you just enter this space, you know? And they were like, well, what? You didn't even see, who did you see in the room before you entered the space? Because 2 people were just talking, and he said, that's mindless. Like, you stop, you open the door, you see what's in the room, and you join the room. You know, so that was just one example of bringing consciousness into every moment of your life. Like, I nearly cut my thumb off while I was there when I was cutting the grass. And that was I mean, there was no fault or anything, that I was well taken care of. I had stitches and stuff, but it was definitely a moment of me not being super mindful.
Yeah.
And so he would also push us physically way past what we thought we could do, which is very Zen-like. There was a lot of stories about us physically doing very intense things, like climbing mountains and going into the ocean and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was really a powerful turning point. I think that's like a big part of what made me, when I came back to the States, I realized I got to go back and study Zen, because to me, Zen is at the heart of Butoh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay. I think you went back and you started your Butoh group. Where was Kazuo Ohno in that? I want to get to him too, but you came back to Seattle. Is that where you went?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kazuo Ohno, I did in the interim, I did go to Yokohama, which is outside of Tokyo. And I never actually lived and trained with Kazuo Ohno, but I spent days and days there and did, he has a studio there. So a lot of my trips back and forth were kind of through him.
Yeah.
He's a teacher. I don't know if you experienced this. It wasn't like a long-term teacher like Roshi.
Yeah.
But he's almost just as intense, and he's in my heart all the time. So it's not like I lived with him and trained like a lot of his students, but the impact on my life was huge. And he, so I think when Ed and I went back to Japan to enter the monastery, we stopped in on Kazuo Ohno, and he has a really high respect for monks. So he was in awe that we were going, and yeah, so that it was kind of like woven between. I did go see him a few times when I was in Kyoto before, but then I really connected with him through the process of entering the monastery.
Yes. Okay. Let's backtrack. So you went back and you started in Seattle. You started a Butoh group.
Mm-hmm. Stillwater. Yeah. It was a small group. Just it was 3 of us, but it turned out to be just Ed and I, a duo. But we were very committed and dedicated. We were performing. Oh God, like weekly, but it was all like on-site, site-specific performances, and our performances were very much the process. So again, it wasn't like, let's do a performance, although we would definitely have a performance time. We performed in theaters as well as outside, but the process up to it was more important than the actual import. We would do the crazy stuff like spend all night out sleeping by the ocean or out under the stars, or we would walk slowly through the city for 4 hours. We had a lot of endurance tests because we were just curious about how our consciousness would change and how that affected the vitality or the transformation of our performance. And like, for example, there was, we did one performance in downtown Seattle, and this homeless man came up and he knocked on our window, and I opened it up and he said, I don't know what the hell I just saw, but that was fucking awesome. And that just transformed my world. I've never seen anything like that. And it was like, that's why we did it. It was like, to kind of just in that moment in time, not accept our reality as it is, like our time and space and the way we move in we all agree as a culture that we're going to walk in this pace, that we're going to move in this vibration, that this is the way the world is. But I think that's what great art does, is it kind of opens you up to the possibility that so many more possibilities of being, and it has to do with our consciousness and focus.
Yes.
And so that's what we did. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. And then I think Ed, he somehow through him, you met the Roshi.
Yeah. I kept saying to Ed, they started to ask us, small newspaper interviewed us, and someone said, what is Butoh? And I said, well, at the heart is Zen. And I was like, Ed, I don't really know what Zen is. What am I talking about? So full of shit. Like, I don't know. I don't know what Zen is. And he goes, well, you got to come meet this guy from Japan. And I went to one of his first sessions on Cloud Mountain before he had his monastery here on Whidbey Island. Yeah. And I remember when I first saw him, he was just this little humble guy, very small, but very, you know, obviously, but I didn't really have any thought, like I wasn't into, in my mind, no, I'm not going to train with anybody. I had no desire to train. I did a couple of Vipassana retreats, but I grew up Catholic. There was just something about the whole ritualistic, the form turned me off. Japan was uninteresting to me. I hate the language. Like I was like, knew I wasn't. So I just went to this retreat wanting to get a flavor of Zen life, like that Zen is an integrated whole. You don't separate your art from your work from this. And I was curious about that. Like, let's do a retreat and see what it's like. So I wasn't really like looking for Roshi for a teacher, but when I went to Sanzen, which is the interview one-on-one with the Roshi, I started to get nervous, like, oh gosh, I'm gonna go face it. I have no idea what I'm doing or what I'm gonna do. And it's kind of a darkly lit room with a candle, and there's Roshi and the translator, Chisan, and I still remember like crystal clear my very first Sanzen and going in, stumbling in. I didn't even know, like, should I bow? I forgot. It's very ritualistic, as you know, how to bow during Sanzen.
Yes.
And I looked up at him and he was like, show me your breath. And I was like, oh, show you. Okay. So I was breathing and I wasn't really looking at him. And I looked up, and it's kind of hard to put into words, but it was the first time in my life that another human being looked at me, like acknowledged me. It wasn't acknowledging that I was a woman, that I was an American, that I was a dancer, that I was anything. It was just like purely seeing me, and not only seeing me, but with this kind of brightness that he fully saw and acknowledged. I mean, as you know, my true nature, but I don't know how to put it, like my true essence, my true core. He could, and it was simple. It wasn't like, oh, I'm seeing you. It was just, tears just started to come down my face. And I that's all I remember. I don't remember the rest of the songs. I don't remember leaving. I just remember no human being ever has seen me. Even the people I was in love with, like nobody in that capacity. And also his full belief that I was already enlightened. I could tell. He already saw me as an enlightened person. And I was like, oh God, wow, this is intense.
Wow.
Yeah. But then the funny part is when I decided first I wanted to go train there for like a month or 3 months. So I was thinking, is it possible? And Chisan, his assistant, said, well, we could maybe make an exception because they usually insist that people stay at least a year. And they go, but why don't you, you're a dancer, you have things going on, maybe we could ask Roshi. And I remember Chisan took me to go ask him formally, and we went into his little cabin, knocked on the door, and I was kind of nervous, and he was up on this little balcony, and he looked over the edge at me, and he was holding a dripping black ink brush because he was doing his calligraphy. And he was like, and I remember like seeing him hold this, and he was like, oh, June, I was like, Roshi, I was thinking maybe I could come to Sogenji, possible? He was like, oh, and then he just stood there for a long time. He goes, okay, oh yeah, okay, good. And then he walked away. And so he's like this goofy, funny, amazing, guy. Yeah. And that's what kind of like, but the final thing that did it, and tell me if I'm talking too much, was Yusan, who you've had on your show, Mark Alban, Yusan. So I remember there was another, I won't say his name, I almost did, but there was another man who had been to Sogenji, and he said, you were thinking of going to Sogenji, right? And he goes, well, let me just talk to you. So I remember we went and had tea in this little, like, I don't know, room outside of the kitchen. We were still in the retreat. And he said, you're an artist and you're very creative. I just worry, because I've been there, that the longer you stay is that your artistic inclination will be squelched, because there's so many form and there's so much hierarchy there, and it is very Japanese. And I just really, you know, but the funny part about this, so he's telling me this really, and I was like, and the way he was telling me was like, so I really think you should think about this. I'm telling you. And as he's telling you to be very considerate and very careful, for some reason, Yusan comes bounding in the door, and he's, to give everyone a background, he was a monk at that time at Sogenji for maybe 5 years or something. And he was the one who came with Roshi for that retreat. And he came bounding in the door trying to get something for Roshi. And he was like, swoop, and he goes, hi. I don't even remember what he said, but it was just this little glow of energy and lightness on his feet, and just and he came in, swirled in, laughing, full of energy, and then he left. And then I turned back to this other person who was like, so I really think your energy will drain if you go to Sogenji. And I'm like,
Yeah. Wow. I love it. So you went. So how'd you get there? You know, how'd you get there?
Yeah, so wait, okay, so Butoh is a different thing. And how did I get, I basically asked in February, and I ended up going in November. Yeah, so I think I just booked a ticket. I didn't have hardly any money. And I just went, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Ed and I, initially my dance partner, went together, the man who introduced me to Roshi in the first place, who had been training with Roshi out of me. He said, yeah, I want to go too. So we were like, well, we'll go kind of we'll come back. And our idea was to come back and start kind of a dance Butoh, like Tanaka's here. Yeah. And we could learn from the Zen life. And so the night before we entered the monastery, we did a performance in Kyoto at a bar. And we were up till like 3 a.m. doing this performance in a bar that my old friends from when I lived there set up for us. We had live music. It was really crazy. And then we were supposed to be at Sogenji by 9 the next morning, but we didn't get there until 9 at night. So it was and then the next morning we were up at 3:30 in the morning practicing. So it was like being hit by a truck. Like I was always up till like 2, 3 in the morning. Yeah. I'm a very late night person, and now I'm waking up at 3 in the morning. Yes. Yeah. So it was a sudden shock, like a dive into ice cold water.
Yes. Okay. So what do you want to say about training? I would love to hear a little bit about that for you. And then I would love to get a little bit to your time at the Pagoda. That would be kind of awesome. But, you know, I think maybe if we could say a little bit about what you touched upon there with Yusan there, this people are full of energy there, and you are, you're kind of this body practitioner there. It's in some ways similar to the Butoh farm in that you're getting in your body, right? Do you talk about that?
Oh yeah, no, that's true. It's, you know, Roshi is very in his body too, but he's always talking about the tanden, you know, the breath. Breath is huge. So you work on your breath, you become one with your breath. It takes as long as it takes. Some people it's 3 months, for some people it's a year, some people it's 5 years. It's breathing where your breath becomes one with your mind. And with the breath, so we're doing, you know, so Genji is known for a lot of zazen. Like we do a lot of zazen there. But we also, samu, which is the working, I guess the best way is like when you see, when I first entered and I saw the monks sweeping the maple leaves from I was like, they were focused. Someone would walk by, they're not like stopping, oh, what's that? they were 100% sweeping the maple leaves. And it seems so boring, but I was mystified and so impressed watching. I think it was Dogen, it was like Sesshin right away. You saw, I mean, all of them really, it's like they're in their feet are planted, and they're moving from tanden, they're moving from their belly, which is a very common thing in the East, you know, Tai Chi, Qigong, all the martial arts, you move from your lower belly. But to see that, and then the focus, so they're focused on what they're doing. They're not like shutting out the rest of the world at all, but it's just a very beautiful thing to watch. If you ever see Japanese monks working in the, you know, at the temples that we go visit, watch them work. And that is kind of the training, is the mind. Where's the mind and the body and the breath? Is it unified when you're working? So it's working, cooking, we're chopping wood for the bath, we're heating the bath water, we're even the way we accept guests, the way we announce the Roshi, it's from the tanden. It's just being aware of how unified our body and mind is without being self-conscious. It's not like a self-conscious awareness, how do I look? It's like just awareness of how the breath, the mind, the body is unified.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I feel like, you know, in training, in some ways similar to your acting training sort of ideal, is that you're kind of stripped down. You're just stripped down to the bare
definitely
life energy, you know. So, so I think that was so appealing to me. This you know, stripping everything away and what's left, you know.
What do you think? I'm just curious about you, Corey. Like, what was it that stripped you? What aspect of the practice do you think stripped us away the most in that life?
Gosh.
Or was it all?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I think just really the physicality of the whole thing, and the energy aspect. I think in order to really feel this energy, you know, you feel where you are stuck. You feel where you're blocked, and
that's super. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The training teaches you to become more barren and more life energy. You know,
right?
And you know, I would say, like, why would the wildest, craziest, not crazy, why would the wildest, most rebellious person go do this training in Japan, where people are, you know, people have this idea of Zen as this like obedience or this people, but we found that it was actually these really rebellious artistic folks there. And that's part of why I want to talk with you today about this, is I want people to know that.
Yeah, I am right there with you on that. I'm like, I feel like that's my koan right now, is to me, and I don't even know how to put it into words, but I am so interested in bringing that raw life energy of Zen to the US, because this is just my experience, but both in France, I studied Zen in France for 3 years, and then here, I have even our sessions, Roshi sessions here, there's a kind of focus on form, and there's a tameness, and there's a safety there in the sense of there's a form. You get up at like a little bit later in the morning, and then there's a lot of naps during the day, and and within the form, it's safe, and at Sogenji, it's not safe, but in a good way. It's not like it's like there's such. I remember Chiso once said, "You never should use the word radical, but this is radical training. Like, never call yourself radical, because it's like but it's so true. It's Sogenji is such a radical training. You don't know what's going to happen day after day. Yeah, sure, you know you're going to get up at 3:30 in the morning, and the bell rings at 3:40 regardless.
Yes.
You have evening, eat at 10 at 9:15 or whatever, depending, and then you're up all night if you want to be up all night doing zazen, you can, but 3:30 in the morning. But within that, there's this edge of you don't know what's going to happen it's so crazy because you're really digging in
Yes.
so deep to your mind, and the mind is an endless field, endless field of,
Yes.
and the people there, even the people form oriented, as we know,
Yeah.
still there's a ruggedness there. There's like,
Yeah.
you're really, really pushing past what you think your limitations are. And that can go from cold without, you know, people with frostbite, to mosquitoes biting you, to, you know, the mukares and the, so there's the physical aspect of not knowing, or during rohatsu when you're up all night, you don't think you can do it, but you push yourself.
Yeah.
And when you push yourself, there's great freedom in that, because you realize, oh my God, I created my own limitations.
Yes.
So there's that aspect, but I don't know what it is. I think it's also the high energy that's there. I think, I do think Roshi has a huge part in that. He, you know, the beauty of that training, and I think why it attracts someone like you and Yusan, is we're not guru, it's not a guru thing. We're like, we want to be just like Roshi.
Yeah.
But, and he's not demanding that. And there's a lot of really independent people there from all walks of life and from the whole world, over the whole world. Like, there's architect who's there, and a psychologist, and there's lawyers, and, you know, I mean, like, and they all come in with this, with holding on to their own truth. But then Roshi is this example of energy, and he gets up an hour before everybody else, and his demand on himself to stay committed to the Zen lineage, just the energy, the vibration of that place is so,
Yes.
I mean, I do believe in vibration of places, because when I came back to the States, I felt like
Yeah.
the vibration was lower, and
Yeah.
so there's that. I don't know. Yeah. And then there's the Sanzen, obviously, that koan practice.
Yes. Yeah, I remember one time I heard the story. I wasn't there. This is before my time, but someone was telling me, oh, people were going to walk over the mountain at night, you know, maybe with Yusan, go walk the Sunday sun or something, you know, and eat a bunch of pastries and drink 12 cups of coffee or something. And Yusan would talk the whole time, you know. But like, someone said, oh, I can't do that. I've got to go back, and I've got to get my sleep, and I've got to I've got it all dialed in. This is what I've got to do to be able to function here. And I think Yusan said something like, well, you don't understand Tanden if that's what you've got to do, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, the training is about about that freedom that you can access that isn't quantifiable. It isn't,
right.
And
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And remember when Daiko in the dead of winter would be sweating because he'd be doing his qigong, and his energy was so strong. And what happens is, you know, during rohatsu, you're up all night. And the interesting thing is, in the Zendo, your body will be sleeping, but your mind will be wide awake. So there'd be this kind of rolling.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a kind of energy that's built there that's incomparable. It's, I mean, I guess the closest I might see is sports people who train really hard.
Yeah. You kind of cook in that. You cook.
Yeah.
Cool. Would you say a little bit about your time at the Pagoda? If you don't want to, that's okay. But if you'd like to say a little bit about that, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I actually did three-month solo retreats while I was there. So I did about 9 months of solo retreats, which I was really lucky because I was to be able to do that. It is, you know, definitely, okay, I guess what I can say about it is, you know, being away from even the Sangha when you're doing a group work, even in the Zendo, when there's 30 of us sitting together, we're all unified, and there's a kind of, we're also within our own training kind of isolation from the society. But when you go alone to a retreat, it even takes you more really you're just there with nature. So you're not feeling the energy of all the people around you. You're not dealing with the same kind of the keisaku, the stick that wakes you up. And in that environment, I really experienced more on subtle and acute level the formation of my thoughts, and that everything, it was more the realization that everything that manifests is born from my own mind, everything. And so if I thought I was getting away from people so I could focus deeper, there would be other distractions that would come in the same, okay, so maybe it's just a snake, literally, which happened to me, would come in. But that would create in me the same reaction as when I'm in the zendo and someone's coming by with the keisaku and hits me unfairly or something like that. Like, I realized that I was creating, you can't get away from your own mind, I guess. And so there was that was very awakening to me. But I also found the freedom in sitting, that I was able to go to much deeper places than I was in the zendo. Because of the freedom of, when I kind of go into a really deep meditation, my body does kind of do this. And every time in the zendo I did this, I'd get hit with the keisaku. So it was very startling when you're in a state where you're kind of losing sense of self and other, and suddenly someone's whacking you. It's just startling. It kind of, I mean, it's good. It wakes you up, and I think it's a good practice. There's a lot to say about that.
Just 1 second, Joe-san. I think, just to say, when you're in a zendo, there are people who are sitting, and then there are people who are, they're gone,
Mm-hmm.
And Joe-san's kind of talking about when you really go into a deep place, this is like the samadhi place.
Yeah, samadhi place. Yeah.
Talk about deep.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I'm somatically oriented. I'm not really good with my brain remembering dates, when Rinzai was born or when how Hakuin, but I'm because I'm somatic, I could kind of go into samadhi states. I always have, and that was another reason why I kind of wanted to practice with the teachers, because I started to find myself in these states. I didn't really know how to formulate within society's form, and so that was startling in the zendo, and also I can feel, it was just challenging for me. But also what I realized when I went, the reason why I kept going back to solo retreats is because I was determined, like I had the freedom, basically. I remember I went up and I said, unless I can see this truth of for myself, and instead of what even Roshi is saying or what other books are saying, to feel that true light illumination within myself, until I feel that, I'm not coming down from the pagoda. Like, I'm not gonna come down. No one's gonna force me to come down until I can taste it and know it for myself.
Yes.
And I actually enjoy is a weird word, but I find worlds of, I don't know, I just find a really ever-changing, fascinating world of exploring mind, somatic and mind-body experience, and how mind and consciousness creates our reality. So I can sit for a long time. Like, that's not hard for me. So I could sit. When I was at the pagoda in the Hermitage, I was sitting, God, most of the time, like sitting. Yeah. But I think, I had this one experience, and I'll just, when, I don't know if you were there then. Were you there when the murderer was at, were you there when I was at the Hermitage?
No.
And the murder? So there was anyway, I was up on a solo retreat, and I would still see Roshi every morning, and that was it for Sanzen. And I would walk down the mountain, see him, and come back up, see nobody else. And there was a 14-day period where Roshi and Shisan were going to Europe. And I had just read this letter to Hakuin before the retreat, and it's the letter was saying that if you're sick, take this opportunity to sit no matter what, 24 hours a day. Don't let anything get in your way. So I kind of took this opportunity of, oh, I don't have to go down to Sanzen. Roshi and Chisen are going away. I have enough food here and water. For 14 days, I'm not letting go. For 14 days, nothing is going to stop me from sitting for 14 days. I was like, you know, and I think it was like 2 days after Roshi left, one of the Sangha came up, it happened to be Jessica, came up. No one came up to that hermitage because I was off the beaten path.
Yeah.
And I saw this little head come up while I was sitting on the porch, and she walked up and she goes, you know what, we talked, we think you should come down. There was someone murdered someone in the city, Okayama, and they're headed up between the monastery and Okayama. They're in the forest here. And it was cold. Yeah. And I knew that if this guy running from the police found my little cabin with a little glowing candle, he would want to come in and get warm. Like, that was my thought. And she walked down, she goes, we think you should come down, it's unsafe. The police came, they told us this murderer is released, you know. And for some reason, because of my state, you know, I said, well, I'll think about it. And she left. And I remember like taking 3 walks around the thing, and I go, I can't, no, I just made this vow, I'm not leaving. And because of my rough state, this was just a trigger for all of my fears. All of my fears came up, and it became such a, I was so filled with fear, like this murderer is, only me and this murderer are here on this forest together, just the 2 of us, and he's gonna find me, and I don't know if he's like, what's gonna happen? Yeah. And at night, the little tanuki raccoons would come under hermitages on stilts, and they would come underneath, and I could hear the leaves walking, and I thought it was him underneath. Every night I would be filled with fear, like he's coming, and it was just us, and I don't know, I feel so defenseless, and it was like maybe this 7th day of feeling this incredible fear of, like, I break into a sweat, and I just became, it felt like a ball in my stomach, like a ball of fear, and I was nauseated. But I was determined not to leave. And for some reason, one morning, the light came through the window, and the stark light came through. And I was sitting there, and I was like, and I don't even know what, it was the light, I don't know what, but it was literally felt like this ball of red fear fell out of me, just fell out of me. And then suddenly I felt this incredible love and compassion just filled me up. And I opened all the doors and windows, and I actually tried to make another cushion. I was like, well, if he comes, I want to, it would be good if he sat with me. He would be so happy. I'll make a little area for him too. And I was like, come, I was hoping he would come. I was like, come. And I just felt like the world should come. And I felt so much, and I was like feeling so much love for this person. And it just filled me. It was, and from then on, it was like smooth sailing. Like everything was golden. But yeah, so it was just, I think, you know, when you're doing a solo retreat, things become, it's almost like right now what we're going through with COVID-19. And that's a little bit how I feel. I've been isolated for so long. I've been isolated in a studio apartment. Yeah. And everything is more raw, or because I'm not being with people every day in society and da-da-da. Yeah. So everything is kind of magnified, crystallized, you know, and so it's like my responsibility of where I focus is really important, because I can focus on some horror and it can fill me up, or, you know, so it's like the responsibility of how am I focusing with this? How am I taking this in?
Yes, yes. Really interesting. I love it. Thank you for the story. Can you talk about when Kazuo Ohno came to Sogenji and what that was like to have those 2 meet, please?
Yeah. So Kazuo Ohno came, and it was during Oseshin, so everybody else was in the Zendo, and they couldn't see him except Dogen was able to, me and Dogen. Dogen is a martial artist, Zen Master. that you should have in your show.
I know I want to.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll just say this about it. I'll say two things about it. One is I wanted to take him to the Momiji Dani, my favorite place of the monastery, it's the Momiji Dani is like the maple tree, I think, for a garden or something. And you walk up this stone path to get there above the lake, and it's beautiful, like 8 large maple trees that you can lie under, and there's a canopy. Anyway, I wanted to take Kazuo Ohno up there, and at the time he was 89 years old, 90 years old, and he was kind of walking with a cane, or his son was helping him walk. Yoshito came with him, and I said, I have to take you to my favorite place. And Yoshito was the kindest, because he knows how much I adore Kazuo Ohno, and he said, do you want to walk him up the path? And I was like, yes. And so I put my hand out, and he held my hand, and the interesting thing was, it felt like he was helping me up. His hand was so hot and so like energetically strong. Wow. And it felt like he was helping me up rather than me helping him up. And then when he went up there, he started to dance with the trees. Kazuo Ohno is the founder of Butoh. I'm sorry, whoever's listening might not know. He is the co-founder of Butoh dance that started in the late 50s with Hijikata. And Tatsumi Hijikata and Kazuo Ohno are the founders of Butoh. And Hijikata died a long time ago when he was like 49 years old. And Kazuo Ohno just died, 10 years ago at the age of 100. And, but anyway, so we were going up to my favorite tree of the thing, and he started dancing, and he walked right up to, of all the trees, my favorite tree, and just like was touching it and holding it. And so then we came back down to have tea with the Roshi, to have them meet. Roshi had already read one of his books, because he had it in Japanese, and he knew about Kazuo Ohno. And he would always say, like, Zen is the root and Butoh is the branches and the leaves, because it's the expression of the root. Yeah. And so we had prepared tea, the whole matcha tea thing for Kazuo Ohno. And Roshi had planned to come and have tea with us. It was all set up for Roshi, where he makes the tea. Yeah. And there was the Roshi's cushion. So we had entered the room first. So there was Kazuo Ohno, me, Dogen, Shi-san, Yoshito. We were all sitting there. And then as soon as Roshi enters, Kazuo Ohno stands up, and we all stay seated. And they meet in the middle of the room standing. And they both are standing like this with gasho. And they're looking at each other's eyes. And I think that went on for, it felt like, I don't know, 10 minutes. It's probably like 3 or 4 minutes. Wow. Just in gasho, looking into each other's eyes. And then they both bowed at the same time. Roshi backed up and left. You left. No tea. Yeah, no tea. Because it was the room was just so silent. Wow. And so I think Chi-san we put the thing, Chi-san ended up making us tea. But it was like after that meeting, it was like, it would have felt kind of weird to sit down and try to have a chat after that. Because it was a meeting of minds. It was a real meeting of minds. It was amazing to observe. Yeah. So that was their meeting.
2 sublime characters.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So great. I want to talk about maybe just 2 more things. And let's talk about, what does it mean to embody this, out in the world and life? What does it mean to bring this mind into life?
Yeah. I mean, I have, you know, one of Roshi's calligraphies that says, "Watch your footsteps," and I feel like, I mean, I've been back from training for 10 years now. So, and it doesn't feel like 10 years, but, and I'm still trying to figure out that very question.
Yeah.
It was another shock to my system to come back to society. It was more shocking to come back here than going, by far. By far. It was like, it's almost like going to Sogenji was like, I'm walking along and there's a fast moving train and somehow I get hooked onto it and I get carried on. But coming back was like jumping off the fast moving train and rolling in the dirt and getting all bruised up and battered. And I'm still, and losing all of my breath, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But it's like, I think watch your footsteps is a big part of it. I also think, you know, I think you might get this too, of this, that kind of energy and what drew us to Sogenji. It's gotta be possible here. And
Yes.
while also being a part of, not separate from. I was scared to be part of for a long time. My first 3 years here, I was like separating myself. I still lived in kind of isolation and I meditated every day. And I was teaching, at that time I was teaching meditation in Butoh. But I didn't really, I didn't go to movies. I didn't hang out with my friends very much. I was trying to protect myself. And now I'm like, no, I've got to be able to be part. And it's like trying to integrate that. And
Yes, yes.
I don't think like we talk a little bit about transmission. I feel like transmission is a meeting of minds, like what I say, Kazuo Ohno and Roshi. That was a kind of transmission, not from one to another, but it was like equal. It's a nameless that only the two people know. And when you feel an essence of Zen in you from the lineage, only that person really knows or feels it. And it's not about if you're wearing the robes, keeping your head shaved, going to Sanzen as you're supposed. It's not about those things. It's not about looking the part. Yeah. And I think it's that kind of transmit. It's like when we saw Roshi with looking at his teacher Mumon Roshi. There was such love in his eyes when we were watching a video of Mumon Roshi. But it was a love beyond a love that, like, love is so overused. It was this,
yes.
And devotion has its own connotations. It's just like, I don't know, it's just, and I feel like once there's a taste of that in our bones, like, I feel like that's always guiding my life. And so practice in daily life it's kind of trusting that, and trusting, you know, like Unsui, because you're ordained monk too, and Unsui is like cloud water, so you float like a cloud. You don't become hooked into anything. It doesn't matter if you're married or not married, or kids or not kids. It's well, you know, it's so hard to say. It's like a state of mind. But so in daily life,
yes.
It's challenging for me, because there is also a part of me that has to remember that. I mean, for me anyway, it's so much about focus, and the vow is the source of my day. It's the source of my motivation. Yes. But I don't always remember that, like, if that makes sense. Like, and I think I don't ever lose faith or trust that is always been at the heart of who I am, even before the actual ordination.
Yes.
But my responsibility of how I form it is really important. And I'm not doing a very good job at all. And I really mean that. I feel like Kensho is not hard. I want everyone to know that. Everyone can have Kensho. And like Hakun had many Kenshos, Satori. It's not hard if that's 100% what you want to do. If that's your motivation and you focus on it, whether you're in a monastery or not, and everyone's experienced tastes of it, whether you're doing music where things are flowing through you. What's important is when you have, like Roshi talks about his kensho, the important thing is after you have it, what are you doing with it? How the Roshi's dedication and his complete, I mean, he's so dedicated, and he wakes up in the morning and it's so, that's just his personality. He's a dragon, right?
Yes.
And I'm not, I'm lazy. I'm a really lazy person. So I think for me, what am I doing with it in America? I spent years just, I'm just going to flow like where the water needs me. No one's asking me, so I'm just going to lay down and face literally like wait for something to show itself. Yeah. And the river kind of dried up because I was waiting, and my energy fell to kind of match. It just fell. So there was nothing presenting itself. Right. So where can we meet it halfway? And I think our responsibility is focus, not necessarily doing things like society things, doing good for the world. That might happen, but I think more important is focus and keeping your mind on your vow, however that is for you, keeping your mind on the vow. And then it might manifest in really odd ways. It might manifest that you're laying around all day, or it might manifest that you're like going out and doing Black Lives Matter marches. It doesn't, it's the truth. Each of us have our own truth, and the honesty of staying with that. And in that truth, you're always going to do good for others, because that's the awakened mind. Is that it's like, just have faith. Whatever you are meant to do right now is the best for the world right now. You might not see it in the moment, but it will present itself. And that's, I do have that trust, but I'm working on, and it's my life koan, I think, right now. It's like how to, what your question, you know, how to do this in daily life here now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, part of what happens with the training, you know, and maybe you'll agree, is that once you touch this real place, you know, that becomes your guide. That becomes you know.
Yeah.
And you know, if even though maybe someone's saying you should do this, this is your compass.
Yeah.
And then you've got to follow that, and that's your connection with the source, with truth.
Yeah. Exactly.
So even if society doesn't get it, even you know, even
and
if,
that's so challenging, because society is telling you everything, and our society is so built on money, and we don't have health insurance here, we don't have schools, so expensive, and I mean, so it's so hard not to follow what everyone's saying. You feel like, oh, maybe I should do this, oh, maybe I should, and it's really intense. But that inner guide, you're right, once, and as you know, there's that when you, okay, so it's not about, I said it's not about the form, but there is, for me, the process of going through the ordination, that threw me off my feet. I did not expect it to affect me like that, because I think, well, if it's true in my gut, I don't need the form, like marriage. I don't need marriage but there's something about that ritual for me of ordination that I am now fully committed to, like you said, that light, and it might not make sense to me, and it's not going to go along with society, and people might really decide that I'm, because it's happened, like, oh, you're not coming to sit with us, you totally let go of your practice, you know, there's all this, you know, or just at school, I don't know, it's interesting not picking the career because I'm worried about money or what other people say, but you're right, it's like this staying true to that path that is bigger than what society expects you. It's not always fits into the box of what our current situation is saying that reality should be.
Right. And we went into this, you know, as very rebellious people looking for some truth. You know, I think that's still guiding us, all that. We've got to find it ourselves. We've got to find our own way to touch it and to experience it and to express it, you know. What is just the closing remarks here? I would love to just hear what is the last thing you'd like to say today? I would love to hear it.
Oh gosh. What the last thing? Um, I'm looking around for quotes. Please, one of my books. Tell me what to
I
say.
love that goes on here.
Yeah, this is great.
It's
Oh
great.
God.
Great.
I don't know. I can show you my picture of the pearl up there because that's what kind of like the pearl that, you know, the monks hide in their robes.
Yeah.
Pearl, the whole universe, our truth, we all have it. And it's just interesting how the folds of our robe, of our life and existence, how we can put on these different robes and like monos, but underneath it we're always gonna, like, the pearl is the most important thing.
Yeah.
That's always there, and it should be hidden most of the time, because if people don't get it, like, it's, who was it that said, was it one of the older, like Nakazawa? He was saying how you know, don't speak poetry to people who aren't poets, because you kind of, it's a waste of time, but it kind of strips some of the energy away, and not to be precious with it, but I don't know. I also think maybe to say something about our time in history right now, and the fact that a lot of us who, the way you describe Zen, like it, and I think you and I know, like with Yusan, there's a certain kind of monk that was there for that raw, rugged, somatic, that reason, and this time in history with Black Lives Matter and COVID, there's a huge shift happening in our consciousness in the world. I really feel this is a chance. It's like, you know, when an earthquake does that, there's a huge break. And I feel like there's a lot coming to the surface that has been under the surface for a long time, maybe 400 years or more. And I feel like some of these, our responsibility now is to really stay connected to what you just described as that light, and not know, we don't know, society is going to change. So it's like our responsibility, not only personally to stay in Zen, but with this, we're helping society make a leap to follow. The society can follow more this light that's not going to make sense. It's going to be more heart-oriented, human-oriented, love-oriented. It's not going to be money-oriented or structure-oriented or personal power-oriented or focused so much on Twitter and Facebook, although that's there too. It's not, but it's yeah. So I think our responsibility is personal, but it's also presenting itself. And maybe that's why we all left the monastery to come back to America.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of us, well, or Europe, but
Yeah. I love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, it's so much fun talking to you.
And
I feel like I talked way too much. I'm like, I'm sorry.
No, it's so great. And I'm so glad that, you know, I want people to get a sense of this, of, you know, your essence, your mind. You know, this is what I'm putting you on here for, so that people can see, oh, this is different. This is a different flavor here. And I want to see that, you know? Yeah. So I think they got a little taste of that, and I hope. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey.
Okay, go. Okay.
All right.
See you later. Okay.
Okay.
Love you.
All right.
Okay.
Love you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.